Because when you walk around here and you see each and every of these hundreds of booths here, they're all talking about the same thing, right? Scaling up, scaling up. And oh, by the way, not just onshore and offshore, we have to scale up all we can to electrify our industries. We have to scale up hydrogen to thousands of gigawatts and thousands of gigawatts of offshore here and hundreds of onshore there. And there's no stoppage to it, right? And that, to me, is the fundamental key, because none of that is going to happen if we don't start looking at how are we going to get those green electrons in the ground, in the oceans, and how on earth are we expected to scale up that supply chain when we can't even make money for the business that's around now? Because the entire supply chain right now is absolutely struggling. And that's no one's talking. I don't think hardly anyone knows it. They all assume that we are going to just have a fantastic future going forward. But the fact of the matter is that we're suffering right now. And so the first question before we even start talking about scaling up the supply chain is how on earth are we going to make some money? Because without making money, forget about the rest. You know, there's got to be some kind of value in what we do and what we create. So that's why I mean, this topic should be on the forefront. It should be on everyone's lips. Because if we don't succeed, then none of the others are going to succeed. It starts with us and it ends with us, right? So this discussion couldn't be more relevant to me. It's probably the discussion to have. And I know, I mean, we're going to sit in a panel now, and developers and manufacturers, and, you know, we have to start really working together now and get that message out loud and clear, that in order for us to actually deliver on all these promises, then we have to start looking at now. Like, how do we make this supply chain we have now resilient so we can start scaling it towards all the rest of this COP representatives wants us to do, right? So that would be my starting point. I don't have the answers, luckily, but I'm still the panel will.
Thank you, Morten. That's a very nice way to set the scene, and hopefully we can take some deep diving at the panel session in a few minutes' time. Before we do that, though, I'd like to introduce our guest who's joining us online today, Gisela Granada, who's the Regional Director of Africa for the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, to give us a bit of an insight into the critical minerals challenge. Gisela, are you there?
I'm here and I can hear you clearly. Good afternoon. I am here and I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me? I'll continue speaking, but I can hear you.
Gisela looks like she's joining us presently.
I will continue speaking, but I can hear you clearly. This is Gisela from the EITI International Secretariat.
When you go live, they can often delay. Anyway, there we go. Gisela, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, hang on, we have no volume. Just hang on a second.
I'll continue speaking, but I think...
No, just wait a second.
Can you hear me? I'll keep speaking in the background, just so that I can test the audio.
Sorry, we're still struggling to get the sound on the live stream.
Hello.
But rest assured, we do have a team of experts, crack woodwork experts, now to get this up. So, sorry. Oh, I believe we should have audio through now.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Or for the lip readers in the room, maybe we can come back to back to concluding remarks. So I think that we'll get to the panel, if that's okay with you, because we'll just park you for 10 minutes or 15 minutes while we have the panel, and then we'll get back to you for the conclusion remarks. So I'd like to introduce the panel one by one. The first panelist today, Michael Hannibal, who's a partner with CIP. Welcome, Michael. We have John Lesemitz, who's the Global Head of Public Affairs at Sector Mixture Renewable Energy. Welcome, John. We have Galati. I knew I was going to struggle on that, Brianna. Global Lead Strategy, Markets and Practice at ERM. And then again, we have Morten Durholm from Vestas as the Group Vice President. So thank you very much. Have we all got I will share. So the first question to the panelists, to all of you, is we speak about this in terms of maybe being a bit of a race to the bottom, that people talk about this challenge that we've got at the moment as a race to the bottom. Is it actually a race to the bottom? And if it is, what can we do to redress this downward spiral? I think we'll start with you, Michael, as the first panelist.
Yeah, I'm happy to do. Is it better if I move over here? Maybe the sound from the loudspeaker is not going into it. Whether it's a race to the bottom, a good question. What I think you can say we have been doing is talking very much about levelized cost of energy. And we have been extremely good in the industry to basically discuss and actually promote levelized cost of energy, how good we have been. And for those who do not know, I have a background in OEM. The last 5 years I've been with CIP, bridging institutional investors money into the industry, but do have a long period in OEM where we constantly were around in the market telling how good we have been in bringing costs down. Actually, I think the industry has been too good in taking costs down. I think the industry should have stopped before taking the last part of the things, and this is actually good enough. And why is it good enough? That's because renewables today, if you look at solar, wind, onshore, offshore, is more than affordable. It's the cheapest thing we can do. It's too cheap. It's actually too cheap to be sustainable. And that's of course scary, as Morten just said. How can we expect that when we have a climate crisis and a security crisis on top, bringing it from extreme growth to exponential growth, that the tier 1, 2, and 3, and 4 can actually cope with that? So it is a significant challenge. And I think to a certain degree, the race to the bottom, of course, needs to stop from the OEMs so that they can bring kind of certainty to tier 2, 3, 4, so that they can also have a business. But it actually also goes upwards. We need to fight governments who believe that they can put too high price tags on basically leasing out land, because that price will either be distributed to the supply chain or to the end consumer in higher electricity prices. So what I really hope will happen, and if anything good out of this terrible situation we are in, if anything good of that and the increased energy prices, is that the understanding of having energy, the value of having energy, and that there is a cost of having energy, that the prices will stay a little bit up, so that there is a reason for believing that it's not just affordable, as it is today, but it is also sustainable, and it's sustainable for the complete value chain.
Thanks, Michael. And Brianna, you have the microphone now. So how does ERM and yourself personally, do you guys see this as well as a trend? You don't need to turn the on button. Get a little bit.
Is that better? Yeah, no, thank you. I think at ERM, we also see that this is a challenge for the supply chain. And we believe that we need more teamwork, more transparency. So, thank you. So teamwork in the sense that we need to work together from policy and government to the developers to the whole supply chain. and understanding what the risks are and making sure that they're shared equitably across the supply chain. We agree and see that certain parts of the supply chain are not able to make money, and that's not gonna be possible if we're trying to accelerate the growth of offshore wind. So that's where transparency comes in. And we all know what kind of issues we're having right now in the world, geopolitical shortages. And so sharing these risks, understanding them, and properly allocating them throughout the supply chain is what we think is probably the way out of this. And making sure contracts are not so punitive on a certain part of the value chain, because we really do need everyone. We need the market to be economically attractive, because we need more capacity and likely more suppliers and more entrants who want to work in offshore wind.
Very much. John, we'll turn to you now to the science meeting perspective. I think Morton gave a very passionate introduction about the importance of this and the importance of this issue to the industry. We're going to actually make these goals. How does science meter view the picture?
Well, thank you very much, Stuart. And I share with Morten many things, but passion about the sector is one of them for sure. To your question on whether we have race to the bottom or not, I think that just looking into, I mean, it is not what we may think. If you look into financial figures of the European OEMs, the answer is yes. I think that Michael, he was mentioning also at the very beginning, we have gone too far. For the goods, I mean, the good consequence of the race to the bottom, or at least the race to becoming more competitive, has been that currently we see increasing targets. It is true that on a PowerPoint, but increasing targets globally. Before the Ukraine invasion, and after the Ukraine invasion, I would say even more with a new ability, which is insecurity. So I think that having become the most competitive energy source, there is a limit to the bottom. So now we are capable to deliver. We have the technology. There are so many things to be investing on: the storage, green hydrogen, grids, in order to unleash the full potential of wind. So we, OEMs and manufacturers, I think we have to somehow stop this competitive race, having become the most competitive. And also, I would like to say that we should think, for example, in according to IEA, to IRENA, we have to quadruple the installations by year in order to achieve net zero. For example, in Europe, last year, it was a record year. We installed 11 gigas. With the new power, we have to install 40. While we should be thinking in investing in new capacities, we are financially struggling even to remain as we are. So to the question whether we have gone too far in risk to the bottom, I can surely say that yes.
Thank you, John. Morton, from your perspective, is it a race to the bottom?
Yeah. Okay. I think, and I also agree that we're probably somewhat, to blame ourselves. I think we those of us who have been in this industry for so many years, we've been a little bit traumatized of how the oil and gas sector were bullying us for being subsidized, and we would never amount to anything. That was how it was 15 years ago when I started. And I think somehow mentally we've been tilted on moving it wrong. Get us to have them to scale and innovate our way out of it. And I think we really have to do that. And now we sit sort of with the consequences of having educated our policymakers that that's what takes place. You remember the days when we were talking about free electricity, right? I mean, looking back at that, it's kind of insane that we even have that conversation. But that was the mood, that was the atmosphere we were in. And now we just have to quickly reverse that and say, listen, what kind of value do you actually get out of these green electrons? And what should that actually be worth? Because we're solving climate change, we're lowering people's electricity bills, we're giving countries energy independence.
Well, what more do you want from us? All you want also good sustainable supply chains and local factories and all the other stuff. And we will deliver that, but that is all the value. And the pool of all that value creation, then has got to have a price that is higher than it is now. In that educational journey you have to be on, and I know we all are, and we all out here at the COP trying to tell policymakers that now it's gotta stop. You're getting so much value out of this industry. There's gonna be some kind of balance for the industry.
Actually, I'll say with you what, because I think I've covered it on something. So would the industry be in the same state that we see now if it wasn't for example, the pandemic, if it wasn't for the Russian invasion of Ukraine? I mean, are these things causing?
It's tough now, but it's also a blessing for us in the sense that it probably just sped up the sort of structural issues that you were talking about, John, and facing the consequences of having so slim margins, and you suddenly see a cost inflation on everything that has to go into the turbine transport, and you just sit with a bad business case all the time. And I think that it's the right way. I'm actually happy that we got that, because now we can have the other community. How do we now create a more sustainable so we can deliver on all the people expect?
I think that should be another part of this equation. And that is now we talk growth and we talk venture growth. What I really think we need to urge politicians and policymakers is to move away from just target and ambition to permanent target. Really permanent target. Because that will drive certainty and it will actually also drive investment. And it will actually create certainty and predictability. And likely it will also make sure that the REITs and the cities reform can go to the banks and actually prepare themselves to get financing for further projects with a more certain background. So I think we also should chase that element when we are around saying yes, the price needs to be higher, and it needs to be higher because it's also for the developer. You have a certain rate, then you need a certain and when kind of market is going up, then you need to follow up. So it's not that it is a certain rate, and it is really just the market there, and we need to see a higher level of the. But the good thing is there's links between them. If you try to make the cost curve for power energy, and then you look at renewable energy, renewable going down, and if we cannot now really going on, it's sustainable. And even if we do so, there's a plenty of gas for being affordable and more affordable than we can do. So it should be able to do that.
Thank you. John, what is coming in?
Not going to add just to what Michael and Morten were saying that the current pandemic, the invasion, everything has accelerated the structural deficiencies that we got. And this is the reason why we are living just an essential momentum, because while all the targets are being lifted, we also can see that policymakers are eager than ever to listen to the industry. And we are seeing policies like the IRA in the US, Repower EU in the European Union. What we feel, and I don't know if you agree, is that thanks to the race to the bottom and the competitiveness where the industry and the entire value chain has been committed to, we have been able to deliver and convince politicians on energy policy. But we have never talked about industrial policies, but in the energy policy. And this is the reason why we face the current situation. While energy infrastructures are considered critical infrastructures, the industry backing is not. So we have only been driven by LCOE. And we can see right now, under the energy security discussion, that we don't only bring costs, not necessarily. It is total economic benefits, but it is also that we are unleashing
the domestic, clean and competitive energy sources so that we are not dependent on third-party energy sources.
Thanks. And Brianna, while you have the microphone, in relation to ERM, are you seeing the impacts of the pandemic and the war against the Ukraine? Are these impacting the industry? And what can we, once these are gone, is it going to be smoother sailing for our industry?
I think that, yeah, the way that the situation is now, if we're seeing of the 15 countries that have 2030 targets, only 3 are on track to make it. So regardless of what's going on in the world, we need to change something if we're going to meet that. Governments are expecting for their offshore wind growth. Ideas that we've been discussing with our clients and government are things like auctions that don't just have price criteria. So trying to do evaluations on wider criteria. We need things like innovation, investment in capacity, local content for a lot of governments. That's important. So focusing on more than just what the price is in the auctions is one way that we think we could try to get out of this and still move towards our accelerated growth targets.
For that, maybe we'll follow up on some of the local content things. Hey, what do the turbine manufacturers think about the local content challenges and providing local content in each market?
It's such a hard discussion because on the one hand, you want free and open market and global flexible supply chains. So on the other hand, you also want to stop, the race to the bottom. And I understand and also have sympathy for adding more complexity into the auction design. We just have to be very careful, right? Because, if we add too much complexity, then you get too much cost, and then you're back to the same situation as before. That said, the price on the auction has not delivered. They're killing the supply chain, so we have to do something. I'm just not smart enough to think about what that should be, I'm afraid.
I'm not sure everyone has a silver bullet there. John?
I don't have the silver bullet. I just wanted to complement what Mozart was saying. I think that the competitiveness levels that we have reached has been thanks to global supply chains. So we will still rely on global competitive supply chains. I think that the current situation shouldn't be any sort of protectionism, because that is going to be the energy transition and that is going to be making it more expensive. But of course, if we want to graduate the installations and we want to speed up the installations, there is going to be the natural market forces are going to be driving local and developing local supply chains. So of course, it is good that we don't have to depend on certain regions for certain components to be sourced. That is not going to happen from one day to the other. So we should keep global cooperation and global agreement like green tech corridors to ensure that the energy transition is happening well. Of course, developing local supply chains, and that is going to happen if we speed up the processes, if we bring a scale to the buildings that are going to be installed in the different regions.
Thanks. So stay with you, John. I wanted to talk about access to critical minerals and commodities. How are we on track here? Is this something that the industry has control over? Do we think that it's looking good at the moment? And what about trade barriers and all the other geopolitical things that are impacting the supply chain over and above just with the general market conditions?
This is what I was referring with the green tech corridors, Stuart. We see that some of the most essential components as the gas turbines, we know that we have zero suppliers in Europe. And because we have, let's say, the quality has developed its supply chains outside Europe. We have made us specific in other components in Europe, but not on this. This is the reason why we fully endorse the critical raw material act's willingness to be enacted for 2023 or the European Raw Material Alliance, but that is going to be taking time. So let's keep on these global cooperation agreements. To the extent possible, let's remove any trade barriers to remain competitive and accessible, and speed crucial. while we will be ensuring that either in Europe, in the US, in other markets, those sources will be also developed, but not in the short term, in the medium term.
Thanks, Martin. What's your view on this? I mean, you've also worked in a lot of those globally as well. So,
Look where we are now, right? I mean, we've scaled this business quite significantly and done so successfully. And so there's sort of a genuine confidence that, of course, we'll find ways to scale to the next level, also in terms of getting access to raw materials. I am, though, concerned about, we're putting so much of our supply chain in one place, and that regionalization, which is already happening across the OEMs, I think it's going to be healthy. We need to get access to components and critical materials from different parts of the world now. I mean, that's the only way forward, because otherwise in this, volatile world, it's simply too risky.
but I mean, for Vestas has been sort of listed as the most sustainable company on the earth last year. How do we do this in a sustainable way? How do we actually ensure that we will continue to do this with regards to sustainability?
So obviously working, recycling, circularity and everything, I mean, all the OEMs are actually doing a pretty good job of this. I think the key component, if you look at doing things sustainable, is the steel part, right? And we're talking to the steel manufacturers. They actually want to go towards green steel. And the good thing is that will return to us because they need turbines, for that to happen. So there is a real, fruitful collaboration waiting to happen between the wind industry and the steel industry. I can see plans being made, and the first green steel projects already happening. So it's going to take us some time, but if we keep focused on that, I think we'll get there.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, how are you seeing access to critical minerals and commodities in terms of, we've got a lot of projects that are going into procurement. Is it going to be capacity?
It's a really good question, and of course now I said that I have been in CIP for 5 years, so and then we can look at some suppliers and say, is it an issue? And then I heard it was an issue, but I also heard that they could figure it out. So I'm pleased with that. What we still can see from outside is that, of course, now we have discussed that there's a lot of things working against and a lot of things needs to be improved from outside. But I do think that the fundamentals needs to be right? The price needs to go up, cost of energy, the value of having energy transferred into a higher price of electricity and energy. Absolutely. Speed and really concrete permitted projects, because that gives predictability for build out and for optimization. Then I do think that at least I could see a few areas where OEMs, they could meet up and take some waste out, not for lowering the cost, I'm not after that, but from potentially take some waste out by smarter collaboration, and potentially also find out how can we use this crisis that we see the OEMs in to do a paradigm shift on some of it. That could be towers, that could be lifting equipment, that could be standardization of diameters, which could take some waste away, not for lowering costs, but for improving bottom line.
Thank you. Brianna, how do you see the critical and rare earth issue in the industry?
I think so. When we're working with companies that are considering entering the offshore wind market, they see the potential growth and they're trying to make their business cases. And I think it's challenging when there's a lack of clarity on materials, on government policy, on whether these targets are going to be realizable. The track record is not as long as other industries. So we see these things as challenges, and we need to make this market attractive if we're going to get some of these innovative companies in, or even just new companies to take on some of the volume that we need to start supplying.
Okay, and staying with you, in terms of policy, is there anything that we can do from a policy perspective that can change the business paradigms that we're seeing at the moment?
Well, I think the first thing is just making the permitting process faster. I think it doesn't make sense that it can take 10 years to permit a project, and
Right.
that's longer than it takes to.
Just on that, do you have some very specific ways to increase the speed of permitting process?
Well, a lot of it is alignment of government when they set their targets, figuring out how the process is going to work. We have some governments that we talk to about doing the environmental impact assessment themselves while they're looking at the lease areas rather than pushing it on the developers, so that they're happy with the results, and it also speeds up the process. Some governments even go to the extent of starting to take on-site measurements, like the Dutch government, for example, before they go to auction. So some of these things can be done in parallel to speed up the process of them allocating the areas to doing the auction and then the projects eventually being built.
And Michael, from your perspective, you guys have a lot of projects in action. Permitting is also a big challenge, I guess. Have you got any practical tips to government who are all watching today about how to cut through the permitting and speed up the processes?
Yeah, actually, I'm actually a fan of getting sites allocated early. And then as a developer, if you know that you have this kind of site, then you can start doing a lot of things in parallel. So instead of basically running a serial track where you basically do certain investigations and then you do certain investigations and then you go to an auction and then only years later you find out who won the auction and then the designer can come in and start designing a wind farm. So I would rather go the way a little bit like Open Door, where you can apply for a project, and if you then have it allocated, then you can basically risk and risk mitigate to a certain degree, and then basically take kind of educated, good investments into next steps while in parallel running the consenting. And then I think we should request that educated countries who have done offshore, that they basically run it smarter when it comes to permit and consenting. And then we shouldn't blame that new countries who have never done offshore, that they potentially have a little bit of an occasional journey to run, because we cannot put everybody in the market being experienced and be able to do it fast from the very beginning.
I know Norton, I can do in section, John. Norton, investors must have a very detailed list of requirements that you'd like to see every government in the world follow in relation to speeding up permitting.
Yeah, I mean, we do, and that's just we launched a campaign to the COP to put focus on permitting. That's very deliberate, because if you look at the list of all the challenges that are in front of us, the most immediate one I see is to speed up the process of permitting. And you know, it's controversial, but I'm really am a fan of more centralized control, because the fact of the matter is a lot of these permitting decisions have been decentralized in municipalities, and I don't think that's where we should be putting our energy policy, security policy, which it is now. I think if we are serious about being in a crisis, then there needs to be a crisis handling approach from central governments. Denmark is a case in point. What good is it that Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister, gets out and says 150 gigawatt, right? What good is that? You know, that's just gotta be like a centralized plan for how to move that forward. The same goes for onshore in the municipalities. Why don't they come out and say, okay, next year, what are we going to build? Okay, there's going to be some areas already by 23, we can actually start getting turbines into the grid if we do this right, and then fast track everything, take back control from the municipalities and get us going. Because if we don't do stuff like that, then I don't believe any words about us being in a crisis, because at least we're not crisis handling things.
Sure, John?
And regarding what Martin was saying about 150 being announced or 200 gigas by 2030 to be installed, we also consider that, for example, but if you already have the targets policy-wise and enacted into your national energy mix ambition, you could be already calling for the options. I mean, let's call it from 2030, all the options already, trying to engage with the relevant stakeholders to make those projects run, centrally controlled. So that could provide us, the supply chain and investors as well, with enough visibility to acquire and procure ourselves, and all the business case will start running. We will get down payments from our customers. We will start investing in new facilities. The targets are there, making them tangible. It's easy between brackets, and that could be one of the elements of the market design that could solve the current situation of the entire industry. But of course, it is a must, the permitting. If we get more targets and more gigawatts to be installed, while we have the current system by a slow permitting, that is going to be a huge bottleneck.
Yeah, it seems to me that we really need to have a departure from the business as usual model that we've adopted, and that somehow we need to maybe get a little bit messier than like not having everything perfect, and maybe just get some speed into this rate of design. Everyone's not in the environment agreement, so it seems we're agreeing in the industry, but how do we get governments to take that risk? Maybe, Ben, do you have any points on how to get governments to take those risks?
I mean, I think it comes back to what I said at the beginning of transparency of what the risks are, and if there's an improper imbalance, and making sure the governments understand that and that it's redistributed. Because you're right, we do maybe need to make things messy, try new things before we figure what the right framework is. We need to meet these growth targets, have a economically attractive supply chain. So yeah, I think more discussions like this, talking about what the issues are and not having it just all be on one part of the value chain is important.
I think if I was an energy minister, just dreaming about that, being at that side of the table one day, then I would simply just change the reward system for the bureaucrats, because right now they're getting rewarded for not making mistakes. They actually risk getting fired if they're making mistakes. And you have to change the reward system, the incentive system in the system, so they get rewarded for speed. And then we have to accept mistakes. And I know from an official or bureaucrat, that's a terrible thing to start. You know, you have to reverse your mindset. But it's the only way forward. These bureaucrats will need to be rewarded for speed, and then they can be extremely helpful to us.
Well, then I'll get started with you. So how do we actually speed up the process so it actually matches a political cycle? You know, we have 4 people, politicians are elected for 4 years or whatever their terms are. And if you look at an offshore wind project, maybe that it takes 10 years to develop, and you've gone through 3 changes of government. And I mean, you know, by the time you've got momentum, you've lost momentum, you've got momentum. How does that impact, and how can we work through that? And how do we ensure a smooth transition, like a bipartisan approach or a sort of development?
No, you're absolutely right, Stuart. But it is a challenge when a project can take 10 years, because you have, as you indicate rightfully, shifting governments. And basically it is a high risk for the developer going through this. But it's also a pain, basically, that you, with the speed and change of technology, that basically you will, even if you're working on a permitting, then if it takes 10 years, then you have to re-permit for another type of turbine. So I think it is a vital part that we need, as mentioned, to get away from a zero failure culture with bureaucrats to if we want to tackle this, then we need speed. And yes, then there will be mistakes. But the biggest mistake, not only for the industry, but for the climate and for our kids and our grandkids and the generations to come, that will be sitting our hands doing nothing, because the climate change will not stop.
Thanks. We're sort of running out of time. Maybe we have the presentation for better to go. And maybe what I'll do is I'll ask each of the panelists for final remarks, and then we can round out the panel from hearing about the challenges of critical minerals and commodities, which was meant to be a core part of the discussion previously. But maybe we'll start with you, John, down the end, for your final thoughts about what we can do to really overcome the supply chain challenges that we're seeing at the moment. I know that Siemens Gamesa has written a white paper about this, or at least a white paper that looks at the challenges, and one of the points within that white paper was about the supply chain and how we deal with these challenges.
I think that and you were mentioning at the very beginning why politicians are more eager than ever to listen. Collaboration among the value chain as regards to the off-takers, IPP generators, assets, tier 1, tier 2, that will provide politicians with enough supportive arguments to see which is the rationale of our claims as regards to accelerating permitting, to changes in market design, not only price-driven auctions, rather than also including qualitative criteria so that we can develop these socioeconomic benefits. I think that the collaboration between us and with the public stakeholders is crucial. We just have, looking into the numbers of the European volumes, it is relevant.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate everything that you said. I think just to add to that,
It's a very exciting industry to be in. We just need to get the right structure so that we're able to state the targets and actually implement the
projects that we need to hit those targets and make the climate change that we all know we need.
Thanks, Gordon.
I feel like stealing from you because the permanent targets I'm going to be using from now on. I like that actually. That is really the pledges. Stop the pledges, and let's talk about what we do next year.
Great. Well, do you have to go with Mark, or is more to say? No, but thanks. No, I can then repeat a couple of other things besides the permanent targets. For me, we need really to drive the momentum now and take the momentum out of the terrible Russia situation, and then stop saying affordability.
Because it is affordable. And we need to now implement and say, yes, it will be on a higher price, but it's significantly lower price than fossil. So that should be kind of good reasons for making it sure that we will get into action.
Thank you very much. And so now I would like you all in the room to thank our panelists for this very interesting, informative discussion. Hopefully next year we can be up on the center stage. Why not? I mean, we should be there. You're right. The industry, this conversation deserves to be had at a very high level. Thank you all very much for participating today. And again, let's see if the video works through. Gisela, are you there?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
She is, but again, it's for the lip readers of the group.
I'm ready and available. I'll keep speaking.
I'm not sure if the people online, is there sound for the people online? Maybe we can just forward it out. We'll have to go back. Anyone in the room, listen to the presentation again. Have to get to relive the presentation one more time.
Hello, can you hear me? It doesn't seem like it's working, unfortunately. We can keep trying. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm assuming colleagues online can hear me, but not those in the room.
What I think we'll do is I think that maybe we will get Gisela to pre-record a speech, and we will add this on to the final version of this presentation that's online. Again, thank you for those online watching here today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks.